Welcome to Conversations with Garmamie. This is episode 30. Our guest is Tanya O'Connor.
The people that are with me and helping out are just as important to the group. They make it happen. I know I've gotten a lot of press, and a lot of it has mentioned my name. It's something I want to make sure everybody always knows, that the people that are helping are just as much a part of making it happen as I am.
Sure.
I'm the gatherer. That's what I am. I'd prefer to be called a gatherer than a leader, because
Compassionate gatherer. We'll speak to Tanya about what motivated her and inspired her to initiate Project Purse. Take us back to a couple of months before you started Project Purse. What motivated you to start Project Purse?
I've been running a lot of things out of my house with my son to help people in the community. And all of my friends and acquaintances have seen it and heard it. And there was a thing came up in a meme on Facebook that showed putting a bunch of much needed items into a purse and giving it to homeless people. And everyone kept saying to me, please, can you do something, or here's something you should do. And because of the things that I've done with my son, it felt really good to be able to do something like that. So, and I think, can I take it back further?
Sure.
My son was really struggling in school and having a difficult time with trying to find his footing, because he's a really caring guy, but he was frustrated with school, and we were trying to figure out, was there a learning disability, or is there, and he's got disabilities there, like as far as sensory issues. And so I thought back and went, hey, I was given the opportunity to show kindness to the community by my family. Let's do this with my son. And when you help others and you do it with an altruistic heart and do it honestly and not because you're trying to prop yourself up in the community, it's amazing how much confidence you get from it. So with Breen, I went, I'm going to do this with him. And he jumped right in. And he started playing his guitar to raise money for projects. And his confidence level went up so much because of it. Like it really raised him up in his feeling of, hey, I'm doing something I really like. And people are liking that I'm doing it. And it was pretty organic in the way it worked out with him. So I love doing this stuff too, and I could use a bit of propping up too, as far as, hey, I love doing this, let's help the community, why don't I do this too? So when I put it out there and everybody reacted to it so quickly and so joyfully and encouraging me to do a project, I went, okay, let's go. And so I started putting it on networking sites for women, like Ladies Who Lunch and We Who Connect, and asking people what they thought and if they would support me. They did. And then I put it through the free cycle programs, and everything was done virtually through social networking. And what was awesome was so many women, especially, jumped in and said, I want to help with this. And like whole government departments, you name it. So that encouraged me to keep going, because it was a lot of work and a lot of research on what I had to do and how to go about getting all this together. And because it mushroomed from there and it kept growing, it was amazing. And everybody seemed to step in more when they heard. So
Tell us a story about certain individuals you've met who are benefiting from this community initiative.
One of the funniest things I'll say is one of our volunteers, Shauna, she stepped right in there, and she decided that she was going to help us 110%. She ended up wanting to be in our video. I asked her she would. She's a woman was on the streets and has gotten her life to a point now where it's amazing. She's happy. She's, doing quite well as far as job-wise, and she's got good footing and good support and great friends around her. But yeah, she had a really tough time and was in shelters, and she has stepped forward so much to help out. And every time she comes out to an event or is, I don't even know how to say it, she constantly is making sure she's putting it out there that these purses are an important thing to do. To be able to, because she had been given the opportunity at one point, and someone had given that to her and said it showed her love. It showed her that someone still cared and that someone appreciated her by doing it. So every time I get tired of everything, I remember Shauna saying to me, thank you. And we have a number of volunteers in the group who have been there, and we have some that are still there who are not fully housed, who at every chance help out. There's also the people on the streets. I've lived on Elgin Street. Years and years and years of living down here, I've gotten to know a lot of the ladies on the street, and I've gotten to know a lot of the men as well. And both of them, when they received these things, it was like giving them gold. It was like giving them a humanity. And I'm not trying to say I'm amazing for doing this, but yeah, the reaction to it is amazing because you're giving people respect.
What are you giving people in the packages, in the purses and so on?
In the purses, there's hygiene products, including toiletries and pads and tampons, those type things. There's something pretty for the ladies if we can. There's makeup, there's chapstick. We also make sure there's condoms in there. There's socks or warm mittens for wintertime, that type thing. There's also, if we have snacks, we try and put those in there. The everyday things that a woman would like in her purse is what we try and put in. And then a little more of things like that. So,
how, I think you spoke about this before, but I just want to follow up some more. How has the community responded as far as this initiative? How has Ottawa responded to it? And yeah. Follow up. Yeah.
Ottawa has stepped up. They've really stepped up. Women have really stepped up. We've also seen a lot of men. I'm amazed with... There's a man who lost his wife a little while ago, and he's been doing it anonymously, but it's because it's through one of our drop-off places. They told me about this man bringing in things, and gradually he's emptying out his wife's stuff and is bringing it in for us. And he packs the purses with all the things, and you can tell he goes and buys things too. And he's been doing this for probably about a month and a half, and it's amazing how special it is that that's happening. It's giving him reason to clean out his wife's stuff and making it, I hope, easier on him. I'm hearing stories from people. We had a decluttering group who put us on their radar, and when people are cleaning out their stuff, can donate it to us as well. And I'm hearing that, like, it's everybody, it's from all areas of Ottawa too. It's and every income bracket too. You know, we're getting purses that, there's some purses we've been getting Kenneth Cole purses and bags that are worth like hundreds of dollars, and just generously donated because it's touched a woman realizing how important her purse is. So yeah, I'm amazed with what people are doing. It continuously keep helping out to do this and want to help. And I'm still, the project is still moving forward. We did the big packing in October, but since then, because I keep being contacted by email or on Facebook or even through the groups where we're reaching out for stuff, women, men, everyone, they're contacting me, asking me how they can give. So it's, yeah, people want to give. People want to support. Yeah.
Just on the flip side, have you heard any negative feedback on the project? Just curious. Has there been any negativity or people questioning, well, why are you doing this? Like in a, you know.
The only negativity there's been a few incidents. There was people saying, well, why are you doing this for homeless people? Homeless people shouldn't, should be going to get it themselves, which unfortunately was, said, and I quickly told them, take a hike. Said
these people came to the event?
No, they messaged me.
Okay.
I get a lot of messages. I get a lot of messages from people. Also, I've got a lot of messages from scammers who are trying to get stuff and are trying to take them and sell them, that type thing, which is going to happen in every group. We had negative feedback from one of the shelters that the things weren't good enough or weren't packaged properly. And part of that is just things slip through the cracks, right? When you're doing 400 purses, you're going to have a few rips and stuff like that. Yeah, that one, the way we had packed our tampons and weren't put in properly in Ziploc bags, and it's a matter of, judgment on the shelters too, on how they do their things. It's a lesson learned for us too, that hey, maybe we should put everything in Ziploc bags rather than they are packaged. We never give anything at all that's been used or has been opened, or we don't. None of that. That never happens because it's just hygienically not okay. Yeah.
What inspired? I think going back to my first question, what inspired you to get out and help people, generally speaking? Because you're as you mentioned before, you've always been involved with your community, with this community as a whole. What who motivated you or inspired you? Tell us about that.
My dad was an amazing community man. Both my parents, but my dad especially. We spent my most wonderful childhood memories are of going downtown Sudbury with my dad and just walking around. My dad had been a mental health nurse in North Bay in the 60s. And he really liked the job, but it wasn't the most stable of jobs as far as feeding your family at that time. So he moved to Sudbury. We all moved to Sudbury, and he became a miner. He still wanted to do that stuff. He still wanted to help people. He dreamed of having a farm to get homeless kids off the street. So his opportunity on the weekends when he was off or when he wasn't working, we would go downtown and we'd have chili at Steve's. But we'd park on the other end of town and walk to Steve's. And all the way through, my dad would either... He'd check on the guys on the street that he had seen and worked with in the mental institution. And even the guys that he didn't. He loved talking to them. And this is guys with mental health issues that were homeless and he would talk to the women, he would talk to everybody. And it taught me not to be afraid of humans and to look at people outside of their first physical appearance and even, their vocal appearance. Because one time we walked up to a guy, and I remember it for the rest of my life. We walked up to a guy in Sudbury. And this guy, my dad knew him. He knew him well. And the man was screaming at the top of his lungs at a mirror on the side of a building. And I was like, Dad, no, we can't do that. And we can't talk to that guy. I was probably about 10. And my dad walked up behind him and he pats him on the back. I can't remember the guy's name, but he's like, hey, Joe. And the man turns around and he looks at my dad and he started to cry. And he says, Breen O'Connor, oh my. And he hugs my dad and gave him the biggest hug. And how are you doing? And he kept shaking my dad's hand. And that impact on my life and my psyche for the rest of my life, that my dad had that power as a magician. And I still see it as a magician, because I'll approach people that are psychotic on the street if they're in danger, and I have several times. Even then, it's really daunting, and you're shaking in your boots when you're doing it, because you could get beat up by this person. You could get, but the power my dad had there, of just this man turning around and looking at him, and the emotion, it stuck with me, and for the rest of my life, that dad had that power. And how valuable and how wonderful is it that my dad was that good a man, that this person who was having this episode was brought out of it by my dad. And not saying my dad saved his life or anything, it was just that in that moment he was cared for by my dad, and that my dad had been able to do that. So
did your dad, when you guys were doing this sort of work, did he explain as to why he was doing it, or did he ever kind of, give you perspective as to what motivated it? Because were other fathers in the community doing that? No, right?
No, there was not. No, my dad was a very humble guy in that type of thing. He was a very proud man. Very caring, very honest, really gregarious, and always had a smart-ass remark for something. Other guys weren't doing this stuff. It was just, and I remember I would say it to him, and he's like, well, we need to take care of everybody. We just need to be there for everybody. And these guys could use a little bit of help and some respect. And quite honestly, he enjoyed talking to them. He loved hearing their stories. But he did that with everyone. Everyone, I remember watching him at one point. We were sitting at a table, and I had just, they'd come here because I was about to have my son, and I had to have a C-section, and it got called off. And we're sitting outside, and there was a nurse and some other women sitting outside beside us, and there was one nurse who, there was something wrong with her face, and she was being quite self-conscious. And, the other women were nice to her and that, but my dad picked up on it right away. He always picked up on those things, and you could tell she was having a really tough time. And my dad, who was sitting closer to her, started talking to her, and he complimented the woman about 20 times on other features that you could tell she was proud of. And by the time she walked out of there, she was walking so tall and so proud. He was that person. He was that person that picked up on people's insecurities and complimented them on stuff. So he never said why he wanted to do these things. He just did it. He'd come to Ottawa. When he came to visit, he'd go to the Megs and Fags on Elgin Street and buy a whole bunch of fancy cigars, little cigars and cigarettes and things like that. And he'd go down to the park, Minto Park, because there's always guys there that are on the streets. And he'd sit there at the picnic table and invite all the guys on the way to come and sit with him. Wow. And they would sit there and they would chat. And he'd go there for hours. I remember thinking, Dad, come on home. I'd like to see you. But it was such a nice thing for him to go do. Because he would go talk to the guys. And he didn't know these guys. He had never met them. They were just guys on the streets. And I don't think it was him giving therapy or anything like that. I think he got as much out of it as the guys did, because he loved hearing their stories. Something really good happened last week. It was really good. And it was a nice insight. I have no... I'm careful, because there tends to be a lot of people who are panhandling or are not properly housed, or who that have mental illness issues. And functioning in life is hard. It's hard for them to do the day-to-day things. Whether they feel like they're outcasts of society or they're I don't even know how to say it. Our healthcare system is not working. It's not working for people with mental health issues. It's not working for people who are chronically homeless, with addiction issues, and oftentimes addiction issues go hand in hand with mental health issues. It's trying to numb the issues that they have. Something that happened last weekend was we ran a project of giving out warm winter items to people on the street. We had a new volunteer in our group who
Project
hadn't...
Warmth?
Project Winter Warmth.
Okay.
And we had a new volunteer who had never interacted with people on the streets. And I love when people want to jump in and do stuff like that, but try to prepare them that you might have somebody throw the mitts back at you, to be very humble when you're giving these things out. This woman sends me a message, said they're asking to pick the hats and mitts and stuff out of the bags that we have. Are we allowed to do that? And I thought, you're not getting that these are people. You're not realizing that they want to look the way they want to look. You know, maybe they don't like purple. As gender neutral as we try, as you know, color neutral as we try, we're gonna have purple hats. But some people like purple hats. Some people like orange hats. Some people, but they're people. They're human. They're the same as everyone else. Even if they are sitting on the sidewalk, they still want to look good. They still want to have the color that they like. They still want the texture that they want. And what was really neat was the woman said, I didn't realize this. And it showed that she went, oh, these are human beings. These are people that are just the same as you and I, wanting something that they like. And they have just as much right to have something they like. We often assume that, oh, they should be thankful for what we give them. So when you go in to buy a coffee in a coffee shop for someone that's sitting outside the coffee shop, they're sitting there because they would like to get warm things while they're trying to raise money to buy whatever it is they're going to buy. Sometimes it's because they pay someone $10 to flop on their couch for the night. Often that's what people are trying to raise money for, is somebody charges them a certain amount of money to sleep on their couch. So when you buy them that coffee, ask them what kind of coffee they want. Maybe they don't like a dark roast. Maybe they like a light roast. You know, I just... And when you assume and you go buy a burger, maybe they don't like burgers. Maybe they like chicken. You know, persons can eat if they have to eat. But I think we often dismiss these are human beings the same as you and I, and they have tastes, they have likes, they have feelings. And just giving something that you feel that they need, they don't necessarily want. So I've seen it many times where I've done it myself, you know, I have a misjudgment of, you know, whether somebody needs something, and they tell me to piss off because I'm trying to give them something. So just remember that, like, they are the same as you and I. They want to have relationships. I think my son last year said to me, when we were handing out things to people in the summertime, he's 11 years old, and it's one of my most proud moments for my kid, because it showed me that he's insightful and he's aware of people and that they're human. He said to me, Mom, why aren't we putting condoms in the packages? And I, without sounding too whatever emotional, I cried. Because my 11-year-old said, why aren't we putting condoms in? He recognized that people on the streets are having sex. And they want to be safe. Mm-hmm. And that they're human. And it was interesting when I was handing out at some of the places, and I, with the shelter managers and at 510 Rideau, people said to me, you put condoms in here. Thank you for doing that. And the shelter people too were like, yeah, you're recognizing that these are human beings, that they have relationships with people too.
Mm-hmm.
That, yeah, I don't know how better to say.
Have you ever met someone on the street that you knew previously, and they just say lost their job, or I guess the question is anyone can find themselves living on the streets? Is that a fair statement?
Yeah, I think it is possible. I in my memory, I saw someone who I had worked with originally. I was in my 20s, and she was a young Native woman who she had addiction issues when she was working with me, but was working. I actually really enjoyed working with her. The only thing is she would steal our tips at least once a week, and she got fired. And probably about 2 years later, I saw her on the streets, and it was emotional because, there was this proud, beautiful young Native woman was on the streets, and unfortunately she was using, and she was selling herself, selling her body. So people it can happen. And that one, addictions are a tough thing, and the background, especially young Native women. I'm seeing young Native men, but there's a lot of young Native women who too much shit has happened to them. Too much shit has happened in their families. The reconciliation stuff, thank God. I think we've got 100 years to go in that to fix our messes. We can't just brush a coat and say, yes, we're going to accept your stories, and we're going to hear your stories, but you got to put stuff into the reserves. You got to do something. Canada has to do something about that, and it's not happening fast enough. You can only do so much when you hear people's stories. It's when you have to do something with those stories. And I'm hoping that the reserves will be better supported, because you're going to have a constant thing of people on the streets coming from these reserves, from a hurt and broken background. And it's not just the residential schools. It's horrible what it did to their parents. It's terrible, but just even now, we're doing terrible things as a government to the Native people. 3/4 of reserves of children are being given Ritalin at the age of 2 years old. They're starting to give kids because it's a controlling of issues. So of course these kids, when they get older, are going to have addiction issues. And you're going to see more of them on the streets. Oh, sorry, I went off track there.
No, that's fine.
But I just see there's an issue there with when people say those damn Indians on the streets. Really? Well, let's do something about it. Let's quit feeding the kids medications and at an early age, so they're not addicted. And let's fix the reserves so that, they're not flooding every year, and they're not, they don't have clean water. When it costs $25 for a watermelon. Really? And yet Coke is cheap. Of course they're going to buy Coke for the kids. Mm-hmm. So of course they're going to have addiction issues. You have that many chemicals in your food, you're going to have addiction issues. And you're going to have mental health issues from that too.
Yeah, you're dealing with intergenerational trauma.
Absolutely.
And when, just to go back to, you mentioned sometimes, you had mentioned that sometimes when you're trying to reach out to someone on the street, sometimes you're shaking in your boots because of fear. What is there a risk? Speak on the risks because of mental health, dealing with
Myself, I've had several times just living downtown Ottawa, where I'll go to talk to somebody or, approach somebody if they need help with something. Usually I've got something in my purse to give to somebody, warm hand warmers or something like that. Quite a few times I've gone to talk to people and they've become aggressive, verbally and physically. You know, I've been punched. Yeah, just going in my door. There was a gentleman that I asked him to, just to get past him. And he was psychotic, and I didn't realize it. And he lost it. I don't know who he thought I was or what I was doing to him. But he was probably scared. And that scared him enough to make him hit me.
Wow.
And so I grabbed somebody to help me, and we calmed him down, and I called the police. I don't generally call the police. Generally, I try and, just, okay, let's calm this situation down. Because if somebody's really just at that moment having a burst, they don't need to go through the trauma of the police arresting them and putting them in handcuffs. And some people do. And there is a risk. There is a risk at all times. Because if it's addiction issues, alcohol, drugs, especially drugs, I know many situations where I've stepped back and not, I've approached and realized, oh, this person is using, especially if it's crack or, meth, or very unreasonable and very volatile.
Right.
And even with my child, because he's so caring, he will step up sometimes. And it's something I've had to teach him that, no, you don't approach everybody, because you never know. And stand your distance. You stand at a striking distance is what I've learned. That even if someone looks like they're okay and they're looking at you and they're smiling, and you still gotta stand your distance. Even with the people that we know. I got a message from my landlord the other day saying to me that one of the ladies that is a regular along our strip, who I talk to all the time, and she's very nice woman, had been really drinking and don't know what happened, but she threatened the landlord. And the landlord is someone, this is our secretary for the landlord. They're really respectful of the people that panhandle along our way. And she sent me a message and said, Tanya, I didn't call the police, and I know you know this woman, but could you let her know that it's not okay? And I said, for sure, but who knows? Who knows what happened to make this woman go off at that point? What was going on in her mind? And it's not just homeless people that I think the potential is there for anybody to break. I do. I think I think everyone has their breaking points. We've seen it in government. We've seen it. Everyone has their breaking points. And especially if you're homeless and you've got kids, or you've got family members, or you never know. The guy next to them might have just taken his life, and their kids have been taken away, or I've seen it so many times where people on the streets have had their kids taken away. And it's absolutely heartbreaking to watch, that these people, that the only love that's for some people who have been severely abused by their parents or by their spouses or by their partners, or been terribly abused. They have children, and that's the only time they've had genuine love that they can trust, is with their kids. And take that away from them. And can you imagine the stressor? Because you often see, if there's mental health issues, it's come from abuse, past abuse. It's come from trauma in their lives. So, yeah, to take away kids. And I'm not saying the kids shouldn't be taken away, because they should. I helped one woman who was pregnant on my doorstep. About 2 weeks after I had been told I wasn't able to ever have kids, there was a woman on my doorstep who was pregnant, and she was using. And it broke my heart. She was homeless. She was homeless, and she was using, and she was pregnant.
She was using drugs.
She was using drugs. And she's on my doorstep, and I took everything in me. I had to. She didn't have proper shoes on. Her shoes were all ripped, and she was cold, and she was young. She was probably about 17.
Jesus.
And it just, I had to take a breath, and because I was angry with her, because how is it this woman who was doing all of it, had all of this shit going on, and was using, could have a baby and I couldn't. And so I stood back, and it took me a couple hours to go inside myself and go, no, she needs your help. So for about a week, I helped make sure she had warm clothes, and I got her to the shelters, and I got her set up within the system so that she had a warm place. And about a week later, she was on my doorstep again using, and I went, what do I do here? So I called the shelters, and they said, we've wiped our hands of her because they were fed up with her. And I went, okay, I'm calling the police, and I'm going to call people that I have that are friends within the legal system and get her put away for the duration of her pregnancy. And so they caught her dealing, and they put her away for the duration of her pregnancy. And best thing that could have happened, because her baby ended up coming out clean and had no addictions. And the baby was taken away immediately from her. And she came back to me a few months after she'd had her baby and told me and thanked me that her baby was clean and it had come out without being addicted. And it was wonderful. And I realized, okay, good that I I checked myself on this. And it was probably about a year and a half later that I got pregnant. And I had a very high risk, extremely high risk pregnancy that they told me that I shouldn't have my child. My child was born not early. He was born like 2 weeks late. He's healthy. He's totally fine. So when I look at it all, I believe in karma, and that was karma. That was absolute karma, that this young girl that normally I would have helped anyways, but it really, I didn't want to. I didn't want to see her being pregnant and me not being pregnant. It was like I was given my child because I helped this girl. And I still think of that he's my miracle guy, and all the doctors even said he was a miracle baby. I stepped up and did this. So it's another reason why I do stuff on the streets and why I make sure I give and recognize that everybody needs help. And I actually saw her the other day. I went into the well, and it was her anniversary. Their, I can't remember, 32nd anniversary, I think. And she was in there, and I see her every once in a while. Sometimes she slips and she uses, but not for very long. She's got herself pretty clean, and she has visitation rights with her child now, who's older than Breen. And it was amazing because she was standing there and she was dancing happily, joyfully with all of these women. And I stood at the back of the room for a while and was just watching how wonderful it was to see this woman doing this. And when I got in, I walked over because I was going to talk to them about Project Purse and bringing some things into them. And she came over and hugged me and told me how her child was. And I helped her. And I think people are always worth that stuff. They help them. In whatever capacity you can respect somebody for being human. Respect them.
I have another question to ask in regards to you're putting your heart and energy into the community doing this kind of work. You're putting a lot of emotion, a lot of energy, a lot of networking, organizing, so on and so forth. What it must be, I'm assuming that it must be emotionally challenging many times over. How do you find balance and not balance, but how do you, because can you disconnect? You know how some people disconnect, be it relief workers or social workers, and I mean you're dealing directly with humans, right? And on the streets who are going through their own trauma and so on. And Do you disconnect when you're at home? Is it? Do you know what I mean? Because this must take a lot of emotional energy. Tanya, how do you manage that? If you don't mind me asking, I know it's a personal question.
No, it's okay to. I wouldn't call it disconnecting. I take mental breaks. If you have a child, and you truly want to spend time with your child, you take breaks. You go have fun. You go, yesterday he got his bottom braces on and he was really upset about it. And because he loves food. And emotionally he was really upset, and he was sad because it's limiting the types of foods that he wants to eat. So we had a hell of a snowball fight. And I think I've just done a bunch of work with Project Winter Warmth, and it was stressful. It gets to be kind of stressful, and just because you're managing so many different people, and to see things that are heart-wrenching, it's difficult sometimes. But we had a snowball fight, and my parents both died of cancer, and they both. My mom had a really tough death. My dad, it was hard seeing him. But he died relatively easily with a heart attack rather than a long thing. But it was hard. It was hard to walk through that. And one of the things my parents taught me was every day in your life, look for fun and do things that are fun. Jump in puddles, ride your bike in the rain. I do those things with my son. I do it with my friends. We did it last fall. I think it was last fall or last summer, where it's just both my son and I were like, it was so many things, and it was stressful, and we were upset, and pouring rain. It started to pour rain when we were coming from somewhere. So we dropped our bags off at home, and we went out on our bikes, and we went and got our friends who live not far and said, come on out on your bikes. And we splashed through puddles for about an hour and a half. And we're laughing, and we were throwing mud at each other, and we were like, those are things that I try to make sure I have happen in my life at least once a week, if not more. They're important things. They're important just to laugh and to snowball fight, splash puddles, throw mud, do stuff that's silly. Silliness is so important, and my mom's motto was always never grow up. Like, always enjoy things around you, and it doesn't always have to be silly. Stop and look at a flower. One of my favorite photos I took last year was because I saw these bumblebees buzzing around some flowers, and I stopped and I took pictures because the color of them was so beautiful. And the bees were because it was cold in the morning and they were slow moving, and so the bees let me touch them while they were doing what they were doing, and I think that's part of the reason why I just live the way I do, in caring and giving and doing things in the community. And I think a lot of people that are truly caregivers or doing these type things, they look around for all the good stuff too. Even though we have bad stuff, or we have emotional stuff, or we have things that are draining sometimes, we don't see it so much as draining either. When I do stuff with the guys on the streets, to me there's beauty in sitting down. I sat down beside a woman the other day because her partner hadn't, he was usually panning with her. He had gone in to get some food, and I walked up and I sat down beside her on a milk crate. And she kind of looked at me like, why are you doing this? And she said, people are going to think you're homeless. And I said, I don't care. And I said, if they do, oh well. I said, you're a pretty cool person and I like you. So why can't I sit beside you? And she beamed because I said that, because I just wanted to sit beside her and talk with her for a bit. And yeah, those kind of things, to me, that's not stressful. I got to sit down for a few. There was an opportunity for me to sit with someone that I think I admire. She's homeless. She's struggling, but she's making it. She's stepping up. She's trying to battle addiction issues. She's trying to, yeah. So I don't always see it as bad stuff. You know, there's beauty on the streets. There's people have beauty. People have their stories. And the kindness within the community on the streets is mind-boggling. I give a woman mitts at least 3 times a week. Same woman. She never has those mitts on. I see those mitts on all the other younger people in the neighborhood who are on the streets. She gives them to them. She always has a pair of mitts that aren't warm enough for her. Always. She's always got. And I always give her warm mitts, and I give her heck. I gave her a coat last week, and I saved the coat for her from our project, and because I knew it would fit her, and it was a long coat, and she's older, like she's got to be late 50s at least, and she was just in heaven about this coat, so she's kept the coat, which is great. But yeah, no, the mitts are always gone, and somebody asked me why I always give her mitts, and I said because I know she makes sure they get to the right spot. You don't need to. I don't need to personally hand them to everybody on the street. That's her job on the street. She's got a job, and she's proud of her job. And she watches out for people, and people watch out for her. Yeah.
If someone were to want to get involved with these initiatives, Project Winter Warmth or Project Purse, where can people find you? How can people reach out to you?
I think the best way is to reach out through my email. It's oconnorta@hotmail.com. oconnorta@hotmail.com. That's probably the best way. We're on Facebook. You need to add yourself to the groups if you want to do that. It's at Project Purse Ottawa, or there's Project Ottawa, which is an umbrella for a lot of initiatives like Project Winter Warmth. So
you're a community leader, and I think you're a compassionate leader, and it's the work you and your people, your community, through all your projects. It's just awesome work. Thank you very much for talking to me.
Thanks. The people that are with me and helping out are just as important to the group. They make it happen. I know I've gotten a lot of press, and a lot of it has mentioned my name. It's something I want to make sure everybody always knows, that the people that are helping are just as much a part of making it happen as I am.
Sure. I'm
the gatherer. That's what I am. I'd prefer to be called a gatherer than a leader, because
compassionate gatherer.
Yeah, no, I do. I get everybody. I'm good at that. I recognize that, and I don't call it ego. I don't call it arrogance. I'm good at getting people together. I'm really good at doing that, and I'm good at organizing people. And and the people that come are amazing, and it's people from all walks of life. People can be very nervous about homeless. We have people that support us so much and would not dare approach a homeless person. And they apologize to me and apologize, and I always keep saying, you know what? We have our own comfort level. In life, we have the fact that they're there. They continue to contribute. They rally people around them. We have one lady that got in at least 50 purses, but wouldn't dare hand it to a homeless person because they're scared. I get it. I get the fear. It's, I get it. Mental health is scary too. Yeah. So I never begrudge anybody's, if they're just willing to help out. Hey, that's awesome. In any way possible. I think it's not always monetary. It's not always giving. We have people that don't give a single thing, not a single donation, but they come, they donate their time. That's valuable. It's very valuable.
Well, I think you've started something very special, think probably deserve a community award. I'm just throwing this out.
I don't need accolades. You know what?
No, I know.
I think one of the big things that I appreciate, I like people saying, hey, good job. I do. I'm human. I enjoy people. I enjoy recognition. I think what's really neat about when you get accolades and when you get press, when you get whatever, I get more donations.
That's it.
It's honesty.
Yeah.
I also, I've been trying to find a job. And something that's come out of this is people are seeing me and saying, hey, she needs a job. Oh, look what she can do. So it's moved things in the community for me by doing it. I didn't do it for that, but it sure helped.
For sure. Yeah.
You know, I showed, hey, I got these skills. Look what I can do. So something I love is showing people that I can do something. Yeah. So hopefully, and that's the thing I keep thinking, okay, let's get some more press here because it'll get us more donations, get more recognition, and it inspires people to do things. If it moves one person to take one purse and hand it to somebody on the street, they've changed one life by doing it. It's, I think that's the most important thing out of it is it changed the life of somebody, or it's just for that moment. Somebody felt cared for. And we all need that. I hope this project has, and the projects I do, continue to show people care for whoever it is around you. Reach out. Don't just, and when you do, you get it back. It comes back to you. When you do something kind for somebody, somebody does something kind for you. And I've had such kind things come back to me by doing this. Like it continues to, just meeting wonderful people that's a reward in itself. Yeah.
Thank you for your time. All the best.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Conversations with Garmamie. For more information, visit garmamie.com. That's GARMAMIE.com.